My name is Angela Quintero, and I am the director of the Deming Center at Columbia Business School. Welcome to this edition of the Leading Through Crisis series. Our session today is on agility, resilience, and collaboration in times of crisis. And to talk about this, it is my privilege to introduce these two amazing CEOs heading iconic American, almost 100-year-old companies based in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Beth Ford and Doug Baker. Beth Ford is president and CEO of Land O'Lakes. I think we're all familiar with this Fortune 200 company, but you may not know that Land O'Lakes is one of the largest farmer-owned cooperatives in the country. Beth is a star alumna of CBS, and she has led a very successful career with 7 leadership roles across 6 industries. She joined Land O'Lakes in 2011 as Chief Supply Chain Officer and became CEO and President in 2018. Passionate advocate for farmers and rural America, she had made a top priority to connect urban citizens to the farmers who grow the food that feed this country and revitalizing the communities in which they live. Throughout her career, Beth has received many awards and recognition. Fortune named her one of the world's 50 greatest leaders and one of the most powerful women in the world. She sits on numerous industry and nonprofit boards, including the Business Roundtable. And at the Deming Center, we are honored to have her as one of our members in the advisory board. Welcome home, Beth, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Equally delighted to introduce our second panelist, Doug Baker, Chairman and CEO of Ecolab, an extraordinary Fortune 500 company which is playing a crucial role in this crisis. Ecolab is the global leader in water, hygiene, and infection prevention solutions and services. They advance food safety, maintain clean environments, and optimize the use of water and energy across sectors like healthcare, food, hospitality, and other industrial sectors. They partner with nearly 3 million customer locations in more than 170 countries. Doug spent 7 years at P&G and joined Ecolab in 1989. He held a number of marketing and management roles in the US and Europe and became president and CEO in 2004, adding chairman to his duties in 2006. Doug sits on the board of Target and has received many awards and recognition. He is part of Forbes CEO Hall of Fame and was named one of the world's top CEOs by Harvard Business Review. In 2018, Columbia Business School awarded Doug the Deming Cup for Operational Excellence for fostering a culture of continuous improvement at Ecolab. Since then, we have been fortunate to have him as part of the Deming Center family. Welcome back to Columbia Business School, Doug. It is a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Okay, so for everyone, before we start, I just wanted to share a quick overview of the format. I will get the discussion started with some questions for our panelists, but everyone attending the webinar should feel free to post questions in the Q&A box. And we will try to get as many of those questions in the time we have. And of course, Beth and Doug, knowing each other so well, should feel free to turn this into a dialogue and ask each other questions. So let us begin. I think it's an understatement to say that the disruption in strategy, vision, and operations of businesses in this crisis has been dramatic and in many ways irreversible. We have yet to see how companies will survive and thrive again once this is all behind us. So to start, I would like to ask you to share with the audience, how has the experience been for you in navigating your company and employees through this crisis, and what lessons are you learning?
Well, Doug, why don't you start? I think, and one of the reasons I say, Doug, why don't you start is because I know Doug's company is very much a multinational, doing business around the world. Ours is primarily domestic with some international, but you would have had an earlier view. So I'm wondering if you took some lessons from the early stages of what you saw, and then what that informed you in your approach. And then I'll follow with what we're seeing.
Good. Yeah, no, certainly. We serve 3 million customer sites in 170 countries around the world. And certainly the breakout, which started in China and peaked in China before it really moved and manifested in other parts of the world, gave us a glimpse. And so we had an understanding of what this might look like and what the potential was fairly early. I'd also say, given the nature of our business, the SARS outbreak, H1N1, MERS, and other breakouts earlier, which were what I would call starter pandemics, but never quite blossomed into full pandemics, we were actively involved in as well. So, I mean, quickly, this is a very asymmetrical disease in almost any number of ways. Certainly, it impacts individuals quite differently. We like to say, well, if you're over X age, it's going to be likely you have a more severe. That's true. But we also have 10-year-olds who get impacted quite severely too. It's not very predictable. And I would say the same as if you look at business segments. So we are across the food chain, and we do food safety all the way from farm, i.e. best production facilities and others, through production, through retail, and through food service. And if you just look at that part, which I'm sure Beth will talk to, you've got the best of times and the worst of times. You have food retailers, grocery stores that haven't seen volume like this ever. And they are at 30 and 40% up in sales as restaurants have been shuttered, closed, and people, if you will, share a stomach has been migrating back to grocery and retail. We're in healthcare, life sciences. So we have customers that are literally trying to meet untold demand. And then we have other customers which are in depression. And so this also gives you a unique, so I've got teams that are literally trying to deal with customers that are on the brink of bankruptcy, and other teams that all they can do is scream for more because you can't quite meet the demand challenges of these industries. And then there's this rolling scenario. I would say, but the truth of managing any of these crises is, and I'll stop here and let Beth go, and then we can pick it up, is trying to understand what you know and what you don't know. Not everything is uncertain. And the problem with this is you get the fog of war, if you want to use that euphemism, and you start thinking nothing's known, and that's just not fundamentally true. And so we quickly try to get down to what's important, protect the enterprise, because without the enterprise, I can't protect my people. Without protecting my people, I can't protect my customers. Without customers, I can't create value for society. And how do we want to think about that? And how do we put these things in order? What are the truths going to be post-COVID? Some are obvious, most aren't. But the ones that are obvious, i.e. hygiene standards, are going to move up. And they're going to stay up. It happened after H1N1. It happened after SARS. And so we can count on that and start investing there. Digital technology connectivity. What's going to happen there? It's going to zoom up expectations, capabilities. And I would say the good news is willingness even of customers to leverage this technology, we've seen escalate. So it's really trying to bifurcate, calm the team, start using your brain versus your emotions solely, but you've got to stay connected. And then start moving forward on things that you can count on while you spend time and be patient around things that haven't quite revealed themselves yet.
Yeah, I think that's such a good add. So I follow on to that. Some of the first things, because we didn't have the earlier views, but of course I was reading about this and thought, this is coming here. Okay, we're going to see an impact. So what should we do? What are the first things we need to think about? And the first thing I did is looked at our liquidity. Looked at our liquidity, because we want to make sure, to your point, that the enterprise is secure. And we are a farmer-owned cooperative, so it's not as though I'm going to go access capital markets in the same way. So I've got to make sure our liquidity positions are good. What is going on with our financing? I'm talking to our banks and making sure that is standard. That is in a good position. At the same time, similar to most companies, I'm sure yours, Doug, we stood up a COVID response team. They were working on what are the implications. And one of the primary issues that you focus on in these situations is your team, their health, their safety, their mental health, their security. And we spent a significant amount of time, and still are spending a significant amount of time on the team, because if the team is healthy and they understand what the guidelines are, then they can execute on behalf of the customers and the consumers. So, as a enterprise, it's the liquidity, but the primary focus is always on the team and then on our members. To Doug's point, we also see this kind of bifurcation. We have tremendous demand at retail for our dairy products, unbelievable. I mean, we can't make enough butter. We had to switch and make sure that we go back to our basics. As my brother was giving me a bad time, whereas XYZ butter, and I'm like, yeah, cinnamon butter is not important right now, Jim. We're going back to stick butter because that's what's going off the shelf. And so you go back to the basics because you've got to flow that through the marketplace. And at the same time, when people get confused, why is dumping milk happening in the country? And why are we seeing this stress at the farm gate? And I want to talk about that for a minute. It's different to say your food service business, which is down to Doug's point significantly. Making a 640-pound block of cheese for food service is different than making cheese sticks for retail, right? The little butter packs we all used to have on airplanes when we used to be on them are different than making stick butter. I mean, there are differences, and thus the supply chain complexity, the demand differences, and the changes in the customers have been significant. And so you have to really reset. And we are a farmer-owned cooperative, so we have multiple businesses. While everybody understands our dairy business, we also own Purina, animal nutrition. We have Winfield Technology, seed, feed, crop protection. So one of the other things we saw is that, farmers are farming. The spring is opening up. They're out in the field. And so that business is underway. And Purina, the animals need food, and they need nutrition. So that business is underway. And so, it is a study of contrast where you've got retail demand, you've got these other businesses performing, but you have some significant gaps financially in your P&L, but also operationally in the way that you need to allocate your resources. And thus, we spend a significant amount of time. I was doing daily calls with my senior team, my top 40 officers. Now we've moved to 3 times a week. Now we're at 2 times a week to talk about the people issues, the business issues, to make sure we were all grounded on what the state of play was. And then, I'm sure we'll come to it. Been spending quite a bit of time on policy issues to support the farmers and the farm communities, because this will be catastrophic to many in the ag community. And that is a primary area of focus for our government affairs team and for our policy teams, and for me personally, to put some underlying support in for our farmer members so that they can make it to the other side at the same time.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you. So going further, I think if we take a more optimistic angle, crises do represent new opportunities as well. And we can think of it in 2 ways. On the one hand, we have opportunities that take existing capacity and ideas to new levels. So, for example, here at Columbia Business School, we moved all our classes online in less than 72 hours. And like the dean said a couple of weeks ago in one of the town hall meetings, we could have taken years in crafting that strategy to take the school online, but the crisis gave us little time, and we managed pretty well, actually. And then there are the other novel opportunities that had not been on the radar at all, but sprung up due to the crisis. And I am wondering if you can tell us a little bit how your companies embrace these 2 types of opportunities, and what do you think they will define, if they will define how you continue to do business in the future?
In the ag sector, it's one of the last industries to be disrupted at a significant level by e-commerce or e-business. So the ecosystem in agriculture really is supportive of a local retailer in the community, local small town, and then the farmers that surround them. And so there's staff that goes out and helps the farmers. There's seed, crop protection, everything. So, and then all of the insights, the analytics used to be just the math. The farmer knew, hey, this field is more profitable for them because there's more opportunity on that field, more output per acre than before. Well, we've been investing in for a number of years in different tools and insights and analytics and an omni-channel play, an e-business play. And that was kind of creeping up a little bit, but wasn't at a significant level. And what we would find is for most industries, once say 15% of orders, e-commerce orders, so orders for seed, crop protection, other parts of the business are occurring online. If you don't have a position, an e-commerce platform or an omni-channel play, then you're never going to catch up. Well, we understood this a couple of years ago, and we made a concentrated or concerted effort to invest our capital against an e-commerce platform, and we stood that up. And we're trying to make sure we're differentiated in our offer because a lot of things are coming off patent, and so we have to make sure we hold margin across this changing landscape. So go back to what has changed. Well, what will change is this accelerant. It's been an accelerant for a move to omni-channel in agriculture. We're well positioned. We're using that play for demand creation. We're trying to connect to the farmer differently, and they are switching as well. They are certainly more comfortable in an e-commerce platform than had been understood before. And yet at the same time, we believe our advantage continues to be our touch from our team, our agronomists that are working directly with the farmer, that personal touch. So it's a combination. We think of it more like the Best Buy model versus the Amazon model, right? Best Buy is going to be in your home doing a number of different things and personalize the service in addition to saying that you could buy some things online for them. So this has been an accelerant, and I could talk about that same pattern that we're seeing in our Purina business and we're seeing in our dairy business, where there's certainly, this has been an accelerant for online and e-commerce tied to each of these business models. And I think we are well positioned to take advantage and shape the playing field in the future.
Yeah, I've got two very good examples. One is very similar to the example Beth just went. We've been investing heavily in digital technology for 6 years. And it's been a big advantage for us to this point, but it's become an even bigger advantage. And it's twofold. It's part, how do we connect customers? And so we've got technology. It enables us to read real time what's happening within, say, customers' cleaning in place unit, which is how you deliver food safety in, say, a milk production facility or in a beverage hall or a food production. And connecting this, we've got a center in Pune, India, where we have engineers monitoring real time. We will quintuple our connection points, customer connection points this year, even though this was launched 7 years ago. And the reason is we have a number of customers that have part of their plant portfolio on, and now they want all their plants on because they understand the advantage. They can see real time what's happening. We can do a lot of remote monitoring, remote fixing, et cetera. The second, and then we have field technology, which is accelerating, i.e. what we had planned to roll out to our field over 3 years because of the need to work remotely and lack of travel and lack of ability to get into some units. The advancement and the uptake of the technology, a lot like Beth was talking about, has been fantastic, and we're leveraging that. The other is just hygiene. Our customers in the hotel space, restaurant space, any consumer-facing business, grocery retail, we do with most of the large retailers in the world, are understanding the expectations of their consumer are heightened. They want clean space, and they want to see visible signs of cleaning. So there's almost this cleaning theater aspect that's going to be important for people to be comfortable that things actually are clean. And so we're working very closely with largest hotel chains and others to create this. What really resonates with consumers? A lot of consumer research that we haven't done in a long time, partnering with agencies. How do we think about branding this differently, et cetera? All that's moving on too. And that's clearly been an advent of COVID. It wouldn't have existed without it, but it does exist, and we're trying to fill that gap.
I want to answer one other way, because I think that that's such an important example. And one of the things that we found, I get asked this a lot, do we think that the workplace is going to change now? Because we're all working remotely. Our teams are out in the field. Our manufacturing plants are operating. They have been. We're considered an essential industry, very much like Doug's. And what's fascinating is our team has never felt more agile, more closely aligned. And what's one of the reasons is that, of course, everybody's present. We're all sitting here. You mentioned, Doug, you get on, okay, let's turn on the computer. I have 8 meetings back to back, and we're always present and able to make decisions. One of the other things that we found is our team is working so well. A great example in food service, because a lot of that demand was going down. Understand, in a cooperative, that we're trying to find a home for the farmer's milk. And putting milk on the ground, dumping milk, is tremendously expensive, because you're still having to pay the farmer for that material, yet you're not using it, right? And it's an environmental challenge. I mean, there are multiple issues with this. So we are in the middle of what's called flush. Flush is the most productive time for cows during the year. It's spring, the weather is cool, they're comfortable, milk production is strong, yet we've had 15 or 20% of demand collapse, right? So what do you do to find a home for the milk? Well, half the milk that our farmers produce, we sell to other customers, Hershey, Nestle, and others, or we convert into a dairy powder, and that goes into those same types of customers. But there's only so much they can take. So we had to find a home for this milk so that we didn't drop it on the ground and cost the money to the farmer and to us. And the team worked in this really cooperative fashion. So in addition to agility as a team, it showed so clearly the importance of great customer relations, great partnerships with our customers, a Saputo, an Agripure, other companies to whom we are partnered and sell to. And we had to go to them and say, we need to help you. And they said, we don't need any because we're not making more cheese. And we say, well, will you co-man for us? Make some mozzarella cheese. Our R&D side went ahead, stood up and did some testing and said, yes, this will work. The marketing team then got together, say, how could we market this cheese so that we can create something brand new on the fly, package it differently, get with the packagers, find a place to store it. And then we went out and sold it to like Cub Foods and supported it. So while this happened in a 30 to 60 day period, because we had to find a home for it. And you learn so many things about the way the team could be much more effective and agile in their thinking. And you learn, again, the importance of good relationships, partnerships, key. This isn't a supplier, kind of relationship. This is about us being partners in this moment. And that really came to the fore in those moments.
Yeah. Listening to both of your answers, there's something very present in your styles. And I think, let's put it this way, as companies struggle for economic survival, in many cases, they push low the focus on people, on collaboration and communities, low in the list of priorities, I mean. And yet, listening to your answers, looking at how you both lead your companies, it shows how strongly you believe that perhaps this is actually the kind of moment that demands a purpose-driven, humanistic leadership. So can you comment on that? And also, like you mentioned before, Beth, how do you balance the business necessities now in the crisis, like liquidity, managing healthy cash flows, ensuring safety and quality, and at the same time maintaining this focus on people and collaboration and communities? I don't know, Doug, do you want to take this first?
Happy. Yeah, I would start out by saying probably Beth and I are both advantaged in that we are running enterprises that can weather a COVID, effectively. It doesn't mean we're not impacted, but I have other customers. Say you're running a large lodging chain. No business is built for zero revenue. And so the decisions they've had to make, in some cases, laying off 80% of their people, was really one of survival. And I think, like Beth mentioned, the first thing we did, protect the enterprise, because without the enterprise, I can't pay anybody. And so, make sure your liquidity is is good enough to see you through even what I'll call the most catastrophic scenarios you might paint. Then really taking care of the team for us was a strategic as well as a moral imperative. I mean, one, this thing hits so darn fast and it moves so quickly. And I've got a large team that takes care of restaurants and hotels. They are half commissioned, half salaried. Their pay was going to drop, anywhere from 40 to 30%, literally in a week. And nobody can handle that at those pay levels, meaning you're putting their house at risk, their family at risk, and everything else. And honestly, we don't have any idea what visibility is. So we immediately put in what we call the Pay Protect program, which we basically told everybody, you'll get the better of what you actually earn or your rolling 12, your 2019 average pay. And just remove fear, right, from the organization and from our team's families for a period of time. And the other benefit, I mean, there's a zillion benefits to this, but I will also tell you, it enables the management level of the team to think more clearly too. Because without doing something like this, if you let fear manifest itself and then massatize, it becomes the only thing management can do. They can't be agile like Beth just talked about. They can't focus on everything else because their teams are in disarray and panicked about what's coming next. So you've got to be clear about what people can expect. You've got to be understanding that if you don't calm the water somewhat, even if it's turbulent outside, you're not going to have thoughtful answers, an agile team, or very positive outcomes. And fundamentally, if you run these companies, and we've made a lot of acquisitions, what you buy when you buy a business is the team. There's IP, but it comes from the team. There are assets, but assets aren't very complicated. I could build another plant. I'm not buying companies for pots and pans or for steel and bricks. We're buying it for know-how, and know-how is resident in the team. And so understanding how we're going to protect the team, to us is like the fundamental linchpin to everything, to how we move forward, how we take care of customers, and strategically how we evolve into even a better company post-COVID.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more that, it's almost kind of a false comparison, like how do you put this versus that, the team versus the health of the business. The team, the team is the business, right? The culture of the company is made up of the people, and it is our differentiated asset. It is everything. And there was a lot of fear. We did a town hall with all employees. We had a few thousand more. I know my chief communications officer was on this call, and she was like, "Oh, Jesus, it's going to be a mess." And I said, "Yeah, it's going to be messy, just like it is at home." And the reality is, what we needed to communicate and what I wanted to communicate at that meeting was similar to what Doug mentions. Your job isn't at risk right now. I do need you to think differently, because if you're in an area that the business is not performing in, or there is no business, guess what? I might ask you to run the help desk, do customer service, do other things, right? We need them to feel calm. And I said, calm is contagious, calm is contagious. And I also try not to minimize the stress. This is really mentally and emotionally challenging. I do a lot of lunch with Beth, breakfast with Beth, with small groups. And I primarily asked initially for the groups that had young children, because I can imagine the stress. You've got young kids at home. Your spouse may still be working. You're trying to get your work done. You don't have the kind of technology. I mean, I'm fortunate. Doug is fortunate. We're sitting here in our home. We have an office. It's separate. And my kids are teenagers, so they are, kind of self-sufficient most of the time. They're teenagers. We're still on the journey there. But the stress. And then I say, you're never going to hear me minimize your stress or your emotion or your mental health by saying, well, you're lucky because you have a job. I think that is just simply wrong, because I don't know, I'm not living their life. And I can imagine all of the pressure and the fear and the concern. And I said that, you just all I need is your best efforts, and give yourself a moment of grace, because frankly, this is very tiring. This is fatiguing. By the end of the week, I'm ready to shut it off, and get back to, going into the other room. And now I'm with my family in a different way. And so we've got to honor that and respect it. The team is the priority. And then the other decisions can be made. Where are we allocating the resource for the business? Where is the priority for the business? And they can hear it. They can listen to it. They can perform in a way that we need for them to perform on our behalf and together. And so that's the way that we think about it. We spend a lot of time, and probably the majority of my time is spent on the people issues right now to make sure everybody is being listened to. We have hotlines. We provided paid leave if they need to deal with childcare issue, a healthcare issue. We paid extra at our plants to recognize the efforts that they were continuing to make, and we continue to do so. I think all of those put voice to something that is primary for individuals in these moments. Does the company respect me enough to put me first in this moment? And yes, we do.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Following up a little bit on a couple of things you said, I think the crisis, at the same time that it reveals new opportunities, it has highlighted critical, previously neglected needs of your stakeholders or collaborators. I mean, for example, Beth, you mentioned, and I know you have been a long time supporter of bringing broadband to rural communities. And in this current scenario where most of everyday activities went online due to the pandemic, the digital gap between urban and rural communities has terrible implications, right? Without reliable broadband, rural citizens can't keep up with schoolwork, businesses, even doctor's appointments. So can you share, Beth, with us what Land O'Lakes is doing to help address this situation?
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up, because I think it is such a critical issue, and it isn't just a rural issue. I keep trying to say I don't understand why we don't think of this as a shared destiny between urban and rural America. It is. This is where our food supply is generated, and we do have a shared destiny. Obviously, 19% of the population lives in rural America, and they comprise 44% of the military. They are investing in this country, and this is a pillar of our national security. One of the things that we saw, and I certainly have seen firsthand as I go out into these communities, is kind of the decimation, rural America as the new inner city. And it is at that level where you see a lack of investment in fundamentally, foundationally, in a number of areas, but certainly in technology access, which is so central to our lives today. So if we agree that the way that can you think of not having any technology access? Literally no broadband, no Wi-Fi, many of them do not. 19 million Americans without this. And right now, how do they finish school? And how do they access a doctor? There's a shortage of 40,000 doctors in rural communities. Hospitals have shut down. So we have been advocating for this in multiple ways. I do sit on the board of the Business Roundtable. We're working on trying to push investment at a scale, $100 to $150 billion is what it would take to close this gap across America, like a 1930s rural electric initiative. And we have to decide it's a right, just like mail delivery and electricity access. And if we do that, then we can prioritize. So we push through that area, but then we decided to take a more direct route at this moment because it is so urgent. And because we see where's the rising costs, rising cases for COVID is coming into rural America. And we knew that was going to happen. And yet they have no access to healthcare. So we partnered proactively with the Mayo Clinic, now it's the Cleveland Clinic, CentraCare, Health Partners, and others. And what we did is through our rural network, we turned on Wi-Fi for free across our rural locations. We're in 10,000 communities. We tried to get partnerships to say, turn on your Wi-Fi for free. We're working with Microsoft as a partner. They're using boosters so that you can be outside a building in your car, get Wi-Fi access, talk to a doctor, finish your homework. And I'll tell you what, it has been unbelievably powerful in a couple of ways. We sent a note to the governors across the country, and we said, here are the policy changes, the regulatory changes you need to make. You need to identify somebody's car as a location that a doctor's appointment can be held. And with that, the reimbursement can be at the same level of an in-person doctor's appointment. Or you need to allow for a prescription to be written even though there's not an in-person visit with that doctor. There are multiple other regulatory issues that need to be, and hurdles that need to be cleared in order to have this access. But with that, the Mayo, for instance, told us that in one day they had more telemedicine appointments and connections than they had had in all of last year. And it tells you what the need is and where the future is and how we can sustain these communities. There's nobody going to be in a community without access to healthcare, without access to technology, without access to education for their children. And it's so foundational. Where's an entrepreneur going to start a business or keep a business? They're not going to do it in a town that doesn't have any technology. So we tried to proactively do this. We're trying to call on the National Governors Association. I'll be with them next week to advocate that they push something into the administration, into the House and into the Senate, that in the next round of funding, this be a priority investment in broadband and technology, because we know it is critically important for the future, but for all of us. This isn't just a rural issue. I know there are many citizens in urban areas, in inner cities, that also lack access to technology, and that leaves us uncompetitive in a weakened position. So, some direct action, some policy action, some action through industry organizations, and that's our push.
Thank you. We're having a few questions coming in from the audience. So I'm going to take this one because it sort of follows up on what you both said about your leadership style and the focus on people. So the question is, how have you both massaged your leadership and then down through the workers and the reorganization of priorities around the change in demand and supply and the business mix, while ensuring everyone clearly understood the need to pivot quickly but still stay safe? So I think, and Doug, in particular for you with operations in so many countries, I think this is particularly interesting.
Yeah. Well, I would say we're still in the midst of this. So I don't know that I've sat down and reflected upon how my style might have changed or not changed yet during COVID. I would say a couple of things. We've always held safety as number one value. And this involves our team, of course, but process safety as well. We're running 130 plants with some sort of chemical reaction going on around the world. And inherent in that is risk for the communities that we sit in, and et cetera. And, I think what has to happen during these is you've got to understand the new risk, but you can't let the ongoing chronic risk, if you will, be ignored. And so we simultaneously wanted to reemphasize how we wanted to define safety. We redefined PPE. Masks in our facilities are PPE, and they're required. This isn't, we don't believe masks are political. We believe that they're important on keeping yourself and your other teammates safe. And so even in offices, defining it as a piece of PPE that must be worn if you're in one of our facilities sort of got around this personal choice. I don't believe in masks. Well, that's fine, but you're going to wear one. And when we go out and look at our facilities, I said we've only had really one facility of our 130 manufacturing sites where we had the beginnings of an outbreak that were quite concerning. And that was in the Dominican Republic, where we are making, frankly, devices for the medical community. So, of course, it was an untimely problem because the demand for these devices was quite high, but we shut that facility down for 2 weeks so that we could stop the potential outbreak early. And I will say we did it because we really didn't know any other way to do it. We thought it was the smartest process. It was the safest for the team. And we were going to need the team for an ongoing basis. It, in fact, did work. And what we've learned is a number of facilities around there did not do it and have had to shut down for much longer as a consequence of letting outbreaks, get traction, if you will. And so you really have to understand differences. We've changed shift times. We no longer have 2 shifts in a locker room at one time. We've separated. We've worked teams so they can't commingle and created more separation. We've given everybody masks in every one of our facilities every day. And we've done all this stuff. And as a result, we have really very little challenge with COVID, particularly in our manufacturing sites, even though they're all up and running.
Yeah, similarly to, we've done the same thing in our manufacturing facilities. We're fortunate. I have a spectacular leader who's our chief supply chain officer on the operations side, and they came up very quickly and reset the processing, the separation of employees, the PPE, all of the things that you would do. Now, your first question about, I'm with Doug on this, we're in the middle of it, so I don't know necessarily I'm being self-reflective, how am I different? I would say that in terms of the messaging of what the priorities are, I think what you would hear from the team, what they've said to me is that it seems as though I'm much more accessible. And one of the reasons is they're seeing me and it feels more intimate. Here we are, we're in our homes. Sometimes I'm doing a call in the morning and one of my children walks in and first thing, and I'm saying, hey, what do you have today for work? And no, you can't have your gaming computer right now. And you're not supposed to get onto electronics before, and so there's an intimacy to that where they see you in a different view, lens, I guess. And with that, it feels more comfortable, I think, in some ways. I mean, they're going to get the same message. They're going to get the strategic issues. We're going to be aligned and giving them some deal of comfort about the performance of the business. We're very active about that. But I do think that there's something about this model right now that opens up a window for them, for who you are as a person versus you are as the CEO, where they're seeing the message and not everybody's seeing me as frequently. Now, likely they're seeing me more frequently. I do videos of myself and I send it out in an email and, the video from my home, just talking about what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing and wishing them well, that type of thing. I think it does change maybe their perception. I don't know that I'm messaging any differently. I'm probably much more active in the way I'm messaging. And then, when you're in the foxhole, it's pretty clear what the priorities are in the foxhole, and making sure we're sharing that with them, I think is led to some good performance.
Yeah, I want to hear more about that, those changes. But I'd like to touch upon on supply chain issues because we're having a few questions coming in from the audience on that. So my first question would be really about resilience. No, and there's been a shift in recent years or even decades towards lean operations, cost savings in the supply chain. And I think this crisis is showing the impact of those practices in shortages in food and drugs and medical supplies. So do you think the current disruptions will result in long-lasting changes, or do you think businesses will go back to previous practices? And in your opinion, what should businesses do or plan to do to make their supply chains more resilient?
Well, I'll start here, and
I'll start.
I think whenever you're in one of these crises, it's like
great.
Oh, I'm sorry, am I frozen? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, pressure shows cracks and creates cracks and shows you where your fissures are. Our strategy from a global supply chain was always to make ideally in the currencies we sold in. And we wanted, if you would, we didn't want currency to become a strategic challenge. Say if you're Boeing, you make all your airplanes in the US, dollar gets strong, your planes get expensive. And so we didn't want currency to be that challenge for us. Plus just the nature of what we make, local is better because shipping can be such a large cost component if you're not careful. So let me just say that strategy has proven to be very smart and helpful in this turbulent time because not only do we have COVID, we have all kinds of new trade situations occurring all over the landscape. And it's proven to be an effective way to even manage through that. So with that said, yeah, sanitizers. So our sanitizer demand is up anywhere from 3 to 10 to 12x. In hand care, it's up 12x. Now, it's very hard to go from 1x to 12x. And of course, customers are always forgiving, and they didn't really expect 12x for a week or two. But their expectations are, of course, unrealistic. Mine are too, by the way, when I'm the customer, and they expected our demand to be able to ramp up exponentially. Truth is, the world couldn't produce enough sanitizer for the world demand. We were out. So if you walk through the aisles of a Target or a Kroger or anywhere else, you saw blank aisles when it came to wipes and hand care and other things. It wasn't because they all of a sudden became poor procurement. It's because they couldn't get the stuff. So we have worked very hard, and we have learned some of our weak spots in the system that we've used, if you will, to assemble a hand care system. And we are going to completely rethink that going forward. My guess is it will look like it costs more on your Excel spreadsheet, but the facts are we rarely put in there the cost of outage, the cost of double shipment because of cuts, and all the rest of the assorted things that went with this quote unquote optimized product supply system for a given product. But it was so unforgiving that it created costs on its own. And this is going to be true across the landscape. So we're in steel mills, aluminum mills, auto manufacturing, electricity manufacturing. Now we're all over data centers. We see this all over the place where people are starting to understand where some of their weak points are. And I'm sure just from a resilience initiative, there's going to be a lot of redesign and manufacturing around this. We hope simultaneously they redesign for water usage too, because honestly, it's going to be a huge issue for most manufacturers coming down the road as well.
Yeah, I'm going to answer two ways, and kind of similarly, what it's likely to do for us, for our animal nutrition business is accelerate our move on our supply chain redesign, transformational redesign for one touch to the customer. And I won't get into that. You guys will all understand that one touch off the manufacturing platform, blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to use a different lens. I mean, we are a farmer-owned cooperative. And one of the things that I would note, you say, is it going to change the supply chain? Well, I would say, let's think about the value chain and food supply. Food supply and food manufacturing is a very skinny margin business. And who carries the most risk in the value chain? The farmer carries the most risk in the value chain. It's why you always are seeing these government support programs. And why is that? Well, you see, when you're in a commodity business and you're trying to optimize your output per acre, for instance, or you have X number of animals, the only way that you can change that in the commodity business and drive profitability is through volume or scale or differentiation, volume or scale or differentiation. And so you see this consolidation at the farm level that is occurring because of the kind of risk that profile and the lack of aligned incentives. The incentive structure financially is not aligned with the risk level that a farmer takes, because a farmer has to be an expert farmer. They have to understand health, safety, labor. They have to be financially very savvy because they have to know when to hedge, when to pull contracts. They got to be policy experts. They have to be all these things, and it can be too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry. They can have a disease. They can have all sorts of things that aren't at all related to how capable they are as a farmer. And it can lead to the collapse of their profitability. And so what I see in this value chain exercise, and will there be a redesign, is what you're going to see is continued consolidation, because only scale at some level will protect a farmer to withstand this kind of market pressure or this down price. And then you go through the value chain. You've all seen the discussion of meat supply and meat packers, and that's built for efficiency. Again, for the thin margins. The processors, it's thin margins. And there's an inability to pass any kind of cost increase on Retail has the least amount of volatility, actually, because they pass it on to the consumer, but they still have their own pressures from the consumer and from other retailers. And so this compression, you have this situation where we want all want a safe, affordable food supply for all of us. Yet at the same time, and so we don't want to pay more, but at the same time, we're saying, boy, that farmer needs more. Or why can't you do more through this value chain to protect all these workers and things like that? Well, there's an expense tied to that. And so it seems in conflict in some ways. A redesign is very difficult for scale production of food. And again, I would say the biggest risk taker is the farmer, because they cannot pass that through, and it oftentimes is a commodity. We need to think of different policy supports on behalf of the farmer. It is in all of our best interest, because we need a safe, affordable food supply. Again, a pillar of our national security. And I'm not sure what the right policy answer is there, but I've seen this now close in for 5 years where these farmers are making no money. If you're a mid-sized farmer, you're making no money. The only way they sustain themselves is to get a second job or a third job. And that's just not, I mean, it's not sustainable for the long term. And we know that. And yet, you know, what is the push against the policy to support that? And I'm not one to say, well, they can't have any risk or there's a minimum price, right? We can see how that can go the other direction. But we're going to need to think of something in this value chain to reset this, to make sure we continue to have that food supply, but also that we're aligning incentives for the farmer so that they can continue to invest in their land and in their animals.
Thank you. There's a question specifically for Doug. How has the global shutdown affected hospitality orders? Can you provide illustrations of the collaborative discussions with hotel buyers? Any comments on working capital and navigating these tough conversations would be appreciated.
Yeah. Well, how do you say zero in 100 languages? You know, what happened was, you know, you literally had hotels where they would have 2 and 3 guests. And the only real question then was, who were they? You're even shocked that they had 2 or 3 people. So I've had a lot of conversations with those running the large hotel chains. They've been customers of ours for decades. I would say 2 things. For them, this impact is 2 and 3x what they felt after 9/11 and or 08/09. So it's a magnitude worse and more challenging. And as I mentioned earlier, nobody's designed for zero revenue. So they've had some real challenges. So yeah, we've talked to them about how do you restructure payables or receivables and the like as we go through this. Most of our conversation, I mean, that's a temporary issue. The large players will get back on their feet. And even those who go through and go bankrupt, typically what happens is hotels are really only suitable to be hotels. You really can't turn a hotel building into an office building. I'm not sure the demand would be there, nor can you easily turn it into a condominium. And so fundamentally what happens is these will go through restructure, debt will be cast off, they will come back at a lower purchase price and end up to be hotels again. But this carnage is not insignificant to those who are obviously invested and or are working there. What we're really focused with these guys on is reopening now. And they're slowly reopening around the world. The expectation of the guests is different. The comfort level of the guest is different. So how they have to present themselves is different. So literally, do you put a seal on the door to say that it's been disinfected? What do guests really want to see? What do they expect now as in-room amenities? Is it antiseptic wipes and hand sanitizer versus a small bottle of wine for VIP, et cetera? And so a lot of reimagining is going on. What do people need to see in terms of visibility of cleaning? And what are they comfortable with? I mean, quite literally conversations around, do we want to see these guys in full regalia of suits, right? And masks and goggles walking around? Is that going to make people more comfortable? Or is that going to make people go, oh my gosh, what's in here? And so managing through this and trying to understand how to redesign the experience, how to prepare for opening, how to manage through the damage that's been done. How do you get your workforce back up? How do you retrain them? How do you manage for like secondary effects like Legionella disease, because the water's been stagnant in the pipes now for a month, and you've got standing water equals bacterial risk. So now you got bacteria and a virus to deal with, et cetera. So, I mean, it's a whole host of things. How do we do it? We've got great teams, great R&D, and great partnering. And all those things are occurring right now, but those are the conversations that we're having with our customers.
You know, Doug, I'm wondering on those as well, because you're right on these. Let me follow on this question to you, because I think it's really so fascinating, because it also speaks to the way we have to think about returning to work in the office, right? It's not just, we're starting to hear more as we learn more about COVID, is it, it's not as stable on a desk environment, for instance, or a package, so you don't need to be necessarily concerned. So will it be that, or is it more the fact that other people are around? And so is it that, what is the policy at the hotel to where everybody has to wear a mask, kind of like you at the manufacturing plant? Great, this isn't a political issue, you have to wear a mask. Or how many people can be in an elevator at the same time as you go up the building to your room, which is a real discussion point for most buildings, for many people, for many employers. And I think what's going to be interesting is how much is it of fear of the cleanliness environment, which will be one issue, and what is it about the number of people at the hotel, and then the community areas, similar for all of us as we think about bringing our workforce back. It's not an insignificant challenge. No, we can't have cafeteria service. You're going to have takeaway service. In the common areas, you have to wear a mask. You have to be sitting 6 feet across. So it's the personal density. I'm wondering if you're hearing that conversation from your partners and in that industry as well.
Yeah, and actually,
absolutely. And obviously in food service. Yeah, I would say it's a big concern, and exactly the things you just walked through. So as you and I contemplate, do we open up our office facilities, and how do you do it, and at what % of the previous population? And you've gone through some of the choke points, right? Elevator, how many people can really be in there safely, and for how long? And we've timed the elevator runs and with a couple of stops and tried to understand transmission effect. Yeah, principally this is an airborne disease. It's not really a surface contamination disease. Surface contamination disease are typically oral diseases. And, this one is a, lung disease. Really, it manifests in pneumonia. And when you have those, it's typically air. And that's what this one is proving to be, which I think we all suspected. And so therefore, how many people, density, how's your air handling system work, how much fresh air are you putting in? I mean, there's a whole host of things at healthy buildings, and it will have an impact on how we think about it. Truth is, I don't believe fear is going to be the governor. Right now, we have rules. So Beth and I, we live miles apart, probably 3. But we in our buildings are maybe further apart than that, but we're right now under the same government, the Minnesota state. I think our governor's really working hard to he's doing a very good job, but it's a very hard job. And, he's listening to the health side very heavily. So, I'm only happy that I'm not him. With that said, that's the governing model right now. But if he said everything's okay now, you still would not have people walking into restaurants at the same pace. You still wouldn't have people getting on airplanes. You still wouldn't have people knocking on our office doors looking to get back in their offices or cubes, because fear is the bigger governor, and individual fear. And until that abates or is allowed to go away through either vaccine or significantly enhanced treatment, that really is what's going to govern human behavior. And we're watching it in Germany. Germany's opening up. Restaurants are now allowed to have internal service. No one's going in. Not yet. There's hardly any incidents in Germany. Germany's done a very good job managing this. But just the fear of putting yourself in proximity is keeping people from going back to old habits. And so I only put that out there because I'm with Beth. I think there's, we're going to open, but we're going to do it on only a voluntary basis. If you've got kid issues at home, if you've got fear that you might have a secondary illness that will put you at heightened risk, we do not want you to be uncomfortable. This work from home has been a lot more effective than I think any of us suspected. And two, we're not looking to go create more angst in an angst-ridden period.
Yeah, right. And there's an efficiency to this that we actually give up, because the fact of the matter is, so let's say that we have 10% that we can fit back in, we're piloting something. And I had a customer service team say, boy, one of the reasons we all like to be back together is because we like to be near each other and then we ask each other questions. But if everybody can't go over to the other person's desk, you have to be 6 feet across, you're in a mask. Is it more effective than what they're doing right now, what they've decided to fashion right now? So I keep saying to my team, in addition to the specifics, and you're right, we've had a really nice, I guess, platform structure from the governor here and from the health department about what we can or cannot do. But beyond that, I have to say, what are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to achieve? Does it improve the business performance? Is the team more effective? And if that's the case, our R&D team, our project engineers, things like that, then yes. Alternatively, just to do it for optics, to say we're back in the building, it's not compelling enough for me or for the team.
Yeah.
Right. There's actually a question in the chat related to this, going back to work and in preparation, at least for that. The question is, has any of your companies deployed any contact tracing for your colleagues, both field or office-based, to manage reported illnesses in the workplace? And if yes, very importantly, was it well received by your colleagues?
Well, I'll only start and let Beth. We're doing it in China, but it's not viewed as unusual in China. And actually, if they're prefer that we're doing it versus have a fear of, say, loss of privacy. So, there's cultural differences here. We are looking at investigating models here. Microsoft has produced an app which is free for use, which basically allows you to do contact tracing quite effectively. But, if you're going to do this, everyone in that environment has to do it, or it really isn't effective. So if you have 50% doing it and the other 50 aren't, then you can't, it's not really a viable technology. So it's a little bit all or nothing. And you've got to get through the standard HIPAA questions and others. And I would just say cultural norms. So we are going to investigate it, and we will continue to do it. We may or may not try it. We haven't made a final decision. We're going to go do some work with our teams to understand, are they going to feel more comfortable with this or less comfortable with this? It's going to have to be an opt-in solution to a point. But since we're doing voluntary return, if you're not comfortable doing this, our position would be, then just don't come back to the office. It's okay, right? But if you are going to come back and we choose to do this, then we're just going to make it like PPE a requirement, but give people a very comfortable way out.
Yeah, I mean, my simple answer would be no, we're not doing contact tracing. We're trying to do other things. And if we have somebody who has had exposure, and or we do ask, we ask actually more of a question. When we have a facility near a meat packing plant, we ask if they have anybody in their family that also works over at that plant. And so we do a little bit of trying to track and trace that way, but we're not doing something more extensively for the reasons that Doug notes. I mean, it's not really accepted here. We take temperatures, we do a number of other things. We ask, they not, carpool. We try to do a number of things like that, but not more extensively than that.
Okay. I'm going to switch back a little bit on the culture and leadership. And looking ahead, to a point in time when the crisis is behind us. Are there measures that have been taken by corporations that actually constitute real improvements? Should some things be carried over to become part of the standard operating procedures?
Well, I think what's the old adage? Don't let a crisis go to waste.
I think,
and
certainly,
you know, there's some real. Go ahead, Doug.
Sorry, there's probably a connection problem here.
Yeah. Can you hear me, Angela?
I can hear you, Doug. Yeah. So, did you hear my question? It's really about.
I did.
You know, okay.
Yeah. And I heard Beth answering, and then it seemed to get cut. So I'll answer, and Beth will probably get reconnected. Yeah, I think there's some fundamental things that we've already learned, and I would also say, you know, we're early, and I think we're going to learn a lot more. But just even the conversation we were having about work habits and where people work, I think we're going to be much more comfortable having, if you will, dual siting, i.e., allowing families to do more work from home, or people who want to. It doesn't have to be a family reason, but I think this idea of working at home and using home base as a official work site is going to be much more acceptable and frankly encouraged. It'll probably change our idea about workplace real estate long term in terms of how do we design and what do we do there over a period of time. I mean, that's a simple answer, but it's built here, and I think it'll have a very positive effect on our team, et cetera. I think Beth is also talking, our whole mantra during 2020 and COVID is we're going to manage this year to put the company in the best position post-COVID. I've been very clear with Wall Street that we don't really care what 2020 results are. They're going to be indicative of nothing that foretells future capabilities. It's just going to tell us what happens when 3 of our segments globally go lights out for a short period of time. Since it's never occurred in the history of man before, we're not really sure that it's an interesting, you know, exercise for people to study going forward in terms of valuation of our company. So our team we are only focused on what are we learning, what are we doing, where do we need to invest. We're heaving up investment in areas. So I would say the other area is just digital and digital connectivity. How do we deal and interact with customers? How do we rewire our relationship with customers, both at the human level and the digital level? And accelerating all that work is another major change that I think is going to come out of this that's going to be very beneficial for all parties.
You know, I'm going to follow on 2 things that I was saying, you know, don't let a crisis go to waste. And I think that that's absolutely the case. A couple things on the work from home, because we both said that this has been actually much more efficient and effective than we would have expected, certainly. My concern is twofold in that, and so we're going to see how much that holds, because I do think that there's more opportunity, but twofold. One is, one of the reasons it's working so well is all of us are at home. So the access is pretty immediate. And when part goes back, or when I go back on the road, or Doug goes back on the road, or we're doing things, is it as effective? Because there is still some need for some personal interaction, and you know, how many people will be in the office or not. And so I really have to think through that. Is it effective now? And there had been some studies, somebody was, I think it was on a McKinsey call, and they said, you know, these 2 or 3 companies, and Yahoo was one of them, they said no more work from home. Remember that a couple of years ago? And I said, well, do you think that was point in time because nobody else was working from home? And is one of the reasons now this is most effective is society's working from home. So, you know, one concern is now we start to open things back up. Right now, what can I do? I can walk around the lake. I can be in my home office. there wasn't much to do, right? And when things start to open back up, are people confused? Like, okay, I'm working from home, and then I'm gonna go out, and I've got to go to the store. I've got to do X, Y, Z. Does it become less effective? We have to judge that, And so, was it a point in time, or now everybody has learned new things, and so more will be, and it will be equally effective? We'll have to see that. One other concern I have on the work from home, and what the staying power will be for the young employees, the young to middle management, because I remember in my career that I guess the development that occurred, the relationships that were built because you were in the building together and you had lunch, and hey, what does that guy do? Oh, I didn't even know we did that. Block, I'm going to have lunch, or something like that, and you miss that. And the teams are effective this way, but it's hard to get scale businesses with all of these broad teams where you're not having anything as a personal connection that you get in that kind of fabric of your day as you're going around the building and as you're meeting. So I have to think through over the long term what you give up, because there are some things that you give up with the efficiency of this model, and think about, it might be more effective in some ways and less effective in others. The other thing, as you said, these results will be indicative of nothing. I like that. I'm not sure I can get away with that with my board. I'm going to try to use that, and I don't know that that's going to go over well, Doug. But the reality is that performance will be, a contrast, and we're narrowing in, trying to hit close to where we thought we might be, but in a different way, right? But the reality is, what I would say is the paperwork exercise of doing a 3-year plan at this instance, I am just not doing it. And I'm telling the board, are you kidding me? I mean, this is a street fight. This is an alley fight, day to day. I don't know what next month it's going to look like. I don't know what next week is going to look like. So anybody asking me for a 3-year plan, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And even if I delivered it, as we would normally do in this cycle, you shouldn't believe it. Right? Because there's such an uneven environment. So with that, we're already starting to think through, what does the incentive structure look like then? How do I align long-term incentives and performance for the business? I've been trying to go back to, what are some primary things we need to do is protect the enterprise, protect the business? What is our liquidity looking like? Are we improving that? What does our performance look like against others in industry, and how are we performing versus them? And then how are we shaping the future using our omni-channel plays and our accelerant, our digital platforms to do different things? So I have to think of it differently in terms of the normal planning cycles. You go through the normal messaging, you go to investors, to bankers, and things like that, because it is very difficult to get a clear lens about how you would plan your business, because we don't know even to this fall, to this summer, what is going to be open, what won't. Are we going to have a resurgence? Are we going to be shut down again? What's going to happen? And when is a vaccine going to emerge? And then how quickly will that be pushed into the population?
Yeah, so I guess a follow-up question to that would be, and I will ask this, I will direct this to Doug to avoid, I think we're having technical, delays with the platform. So Doug, if you could take this one. Just in general, like, we've been now several months into this crisis. So knowing what you know now, and reflecting on all this, what do you think you would have done differently?
I would have gotten after hand care platform capacity issues more aggressively, faster. But we know that now. And let's say there's no lack of understanding in the company where that is as a priority. But you always look. I always say business is a series of mistakes. You just try not to make serious mistakes, and a lot of this is really going through and trying to understand what mistake can you afford to make, particularly in ambiguous situations. Meaning, I would rather be sitting here with too much hand care capacity and a little too much capital than not being able to meet customers' expectations long term. I mean, it's, these are my two choices, because like that, I have no idea, honestly, what demand's going to look like in 3 months. I know what they tell me, but I've also watched this movie before. But it's a little bit, make a choice, be clear, be decisive, and get after it, but understand and be willing to make a mistake and understand what that mistake is and can you live with it as you go through it. But I'd get on that faster. In terms of what I wouldn't do different, I would have done exactly what I did with the team. It's going to cost us a bunch of money. It's the right thing to do. I think it's fundamentally the smart thing to do. I do have the fortune, Wall Street is bought off on our, conversation around 2020. I said, I'm not going to be frivolous with our money, but I'm going to continue to invest this year. And I'm going to continue to pound money in areas that I'm quite confident in. And I list them for them. And they would much rather have me do that than, I believe, optimize this year. And that's really, those are the decisions we've made, and that's the ship we've sailed. It's really hard culturally for our team. Our team is a delivery team. They are going crazy. Second quarter is coming to an end. I'm getting these calls. What do you want me to do? Said, I want you to let second quarter be the second quarter. I want you to continue to invest in digital, continue to do this. Don't sweat it. It's really hard. I mean, Beth and I probably programmed exactly the same. This is not my DNA. But for this year, for us, and you got to do, I run my company, and Beth does an unbelievable job running her company. If we switched seats, we'd probably be doing the things each other are doing in those seats, right? You got to go run the thing you got in the situation you have, and et cetera. But those decisions, I think, have been the right ones for us. So I think we got big picture right. We got some small picture wrong, but we are fixing it and putting real talent on it to get after it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say it any better. The fact of the matter is, I think the best priority was to put the team first. That's a right thing. That never is wrong. That's never wrong. Good news. It's like your mother taught you back when you were a child. Treat people well, and they will perform. And that's what it's all about. Putting the members as a priority. That's right. But I can point to probably mistakes I make every day. We're not going to get everything right. We try not to take asymmetric risks with the business. We try to protect the enterprise. I was giving an example yesterday to one of my team members. I said, what, this person is sweating it. Kind of the same reason yours. I was like, oh my God, I can tell the stress. And I said, she's got to realize we're kind of in the snowstorm. And what is the example that the driver's ed instructor gives you? Like if you're in a snowstorm and the car in front of you brakes, don't yank your wheel one way or the other, right? You pump the brake a little bit, you stay calm, you keep going in front, right? And if you yank the wheel, you go in the ditch. So please tell her not to yank the wheel. It's fine. We're going to have some mistakes. Pump the brakes, keep calm. Calm is contagious, and we need to show up that way. So, I'm sure there are times that people would say, well, she seems stressed or whatever, but I say, I'm imperfect. We're going to do everything we can to make sure we hit the priorities, and I expect you're going to do the same.
Amen.
And Beth, acknowledging what you just said, that we're always going to make mistakes. I am wondering if this crisis, I think no one was really prepared for this crisis, right? So what are the lessons learned here? Should we be doing a better job in being prepared for these unexpected situations? Or is your view that we should just be, or not just, but focus on being agile and reacting innovatively when crises strike? Where's the balance?
Well, Doug said it. He's been through more crises and pandemics or early pandemics than me. Your comment was, how can you prepare for the unexpected? Well, by definition, you can't, because it was unexpected, right? So you can't invest You have to invest wisely to make sure your platforms are agile, that you have as much variability in your expense as you possibly can to protect the enterprise, that you're always working your balance sheet and your liquidity to make sure your enterprise is strong and you don't get over your skis. But I don't know how you plan for something of this scale. I think what it does is it reinforces for me and for most, I'll just speak in general, that the value of science, the value of analytics, the need for us to follow what the healthcare and science providers give us, so that you can make good informed decisions, and then you try to manage your business accordingly. The future, though, again, is about we're not news reporters when you're running a business. You're not a news reporter. You're not a reactionary. What you have to do is shape the future. So if you've seen this now, you would be, it would be a really bad day if I left this moment and we got back to normal and we had not shaped the future where we know things have accelerated, including digital, including omni-channel, including things that have not been present in some of these platforms previously. That would be a mistake. And that's what I would say, is the key learning I keep pushing to the team. You're not a news reporter. It's fine to give me the information. Now you solve what is the future, and push for the future for the business and for the industry.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's not a lot to add. I agree with Beth on this pandemic question, which is, I think all the breathlessness around ill preparation and the like, this is like a 1 in 100 year event. It's very unpredictable. It's been predicted a number of times. This is a classic situation that humans will never get right successfully often. And so I'm a little bit, through our company, we had PPE, we had some other stuff, but we weren't perfect. And that's life. The irony is we have another event called global warming, which is a steady march and predictable, and we know it's coming. That one we're not doing much about, and that one is ridiculous. So, the pandemic, which is comes out of thin air, that's a hard thing to get ready for. The steady march, it's like a flood. We're watching the flooding of a river, and we see it slowly coming up, and we can predict the crest, yet we're ignoring the sandbagging. And, I think that one society doesn't get a pass on if you really, and I think the impact is going to make this look small.
Okay. I want to ask you, and perhaps Doug, you can take this one. Both of you run companies in Minneapolis, St. Paul, which is home for 16 Fortune 500 companies, including yours, of course. So I am curious to know if the business leaders in the community have come together at this time, and have there been collaborations to share best practices around the crisis and in general, just lessons learned, ideas of, for change going forward, etc.
Yeah, quite a bit. I think one of the benefits of living here is the fact that there are a number of other people in jobs similar to yours, but in most instances, they're non-competitive. And so you can seek out. When I was an early CEO, I sought out counsel from different people. Sometimes hard to go to the board, and sometimes the board can help and can't. But yeah, we've been having weekly calls. The administration, the governor's administration is frequently on those calls, trying to understand what the thought process is. What can we do? Governor's asked a number of folks for help around securing PPE. Now there's hiring questions that we're trying to help the governor's group handle and manage. I think all of that's been quite successful, but it's been built on a base of trust. It's been built over a long period of time. There's a Minnesota Business Partnership, which is the top CEOs in the state, that's been a very active and I think a very effective community of CEOs and gathering point. That's been a great facility for all this going on. The last thing I'll say is we've had a recent just horrific tragedy in Minneapolis with George Floyd. And I mean, it's almost unimaginable and everything else. And there's another, I think, good example how we're trying to come together as a community and show the whole community the support it deserves and what needs to move out of this. And I think even some of the work Beth has fostered around broadband ultimately will be an answer, because it's not just, as Beth so eloquently described, an issue in rural, it's also an issue in key parts. There's just a digital divide. Rural is a big part of it. And I think solving that is absolutely critical. And I can't salute Beth enough for her leadership on that initiative. It's been big and impactful. And then there's also this rural piece, which is going to get much more attention, I believe.
Yeah, Doug has been, and his team have been leaders at trying to get PPE into this area. To Doug's point, Minneapolis Business Partners, we have a terrific executive director, Charlie Weaver. He's tone perfect, partnered with the government agencies, and everybody with that expertise or with that access necessary to support the hospital system, for instance, has stepped up and said, here, I'll allocate my staff. I know one of Doug's key leaders has been doing that on behalf of the governor. And so it is a very active community. It is what makes it special to be here in Minneapolis. And I've lived in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, a number of different cities, all wonderful, love them. Here, I would say that the business community is really quite active at partnering on a variety of issues. The disparity in outcomes for education, for for minority communities. I mean, it's any number of things. And in this instance, that has held strong, where, again, the governor, to his credit, has been asking for input and help from the business community and from others. And you see everybody stepping up. And we're earlier. I mean, New York has been earlier and now is kind of plateaued and starting to come down. We're still on the march up in terms of cases and deaths for COVID here. And that's the same thing for rural communities in the state and in the upper Midwest. So the fact that the CEOs and the business partners are working together to position us as best we can, I think is critically important.
So unfortunately, we're running out of time. I'm going to close with one last question to both of you. So perhaps we're going to have Beth answer first. Everyone says that crisis changes dramatically as a society, as generation, and as people. So we would like to know how you're experiencing. Are you experiencing a change in yourself as a leader, as a citizen, as a family member in general?
Well, as a family member, I've been home now with my family for 2 or 3 months. And the fact that everybody's not sleeping with one eye open, everybody seems like we're getting along pretty well. That's all good. And it's a blessing for me because my children are teenagers. My daughter is my oldest, and she's set to graduate from high school next week, and she'll turn 18. And this is a blessing for me, right? I would not have seen this last component and wouldn't have seen my sons for a period of time. So has it changed me? Well, I'm a much more active, involved parent with them right now because I have time to be so. Has it changed me as a leader? No, I think it reinforced the things we talked about earlier. And that is, make sure that you're intentional about putting your people first, and that you note that they know that. And maybe before I thought I was, but now when there is this fear, this concern, this emotional upheaval, this challenge, being present for them in a different way, I think would be say, I don't know if it's a change, but maybe a real focus on those areas, and I think that's a positive thing. I can't look back now because we're in the middle of it, so I don't know what the end of the story is, how it will be viewed by others. So it's one thing for me to say these things about how that has changed, but I think it's about what others might perceive or how they may interact with me, that they would be better served and better constituents to answer that question.
I think I agree with a lot of what Beth said. There's some real blessings as a consequence of this, which i.e., I think connectivity and stuff, maybe home and settling down and slowing down, and the time that allows you to reflect and think, which is different. The challenge, and Beth alluded to this earlier, is how much input you get from being with a team and how you can sense how people are feeling and whether they're stressed or how they're doing. Just, we all have this intuition that sort of is, runs silent, and, it informs us, and we lose a lot of that input as a consequence of working in independent buildings. And so I found myself consciously spending more time. I had to talk to my R&D director. He took a big bike spill 8 weeks ago and, racked up 4 broken ribs, a bad shoulder, and fortunately had a helmet on. And I told Larry I never really hired him for his throwing arm, but I did need his brain. So thank God he had a helmet on. But I was talking to Larry today. I said, well, how are you doing physically? I've been asked for a while, how's it going and rehab? And, it's just, you don't have any chance to physically watch this or see it. So I think it's consciously just making sure you stay connected on both the professional and personal level. I've always admired Beth because, Beth leads head and heart. And I think you need both. You need the full person to be a great leader. It can't just be this intellectual exercise of moving, chess men around a board. It's, the whole thing is our team needs to believe and trust that we have the right intent. They also know we're going to make mistakes, and they've got to trust that we'll just admit them, fess up, and then try to make a new mistake, right, moving forward. And so I just think in times of disconnection, finding ways to stay connected are even more important.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very, very much. This was a very interesting discussion, enlightening, and I think on behalf of the whole Columbia Business School community, I want to thank you both for your time, being so open, and for these great lessons. And to the whole audience, thank you very much for connecting. Please stay safe and healthy and have a wonderful rest of the day. Goodbye.
Thank you.